Next up for us, 1 p.m. Eastern, the Cincinnati Bengals, 12-4, 6-3 on the road at the Cleveland Browns, 7-10, 4-4 at home. Cleveland Browns Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, 68 Fahrenheit, mostly cloudy, 11 miles per hour. And I love the Bengals. I've become a big fan of this football team here. Obviously, Joe Burrow's calf strain's been hanging over this game for weeks. I can talk about what Zach Taylor said, and I will hear about him, but I expect him to be in the lineup. The win total is at 10.5, juice to the over at -145 to win the AFC North at +140, to win the AFC at +550, and the Super Bowl at +1100. When I back futures, I think, what will this be in week 8 or week 10 or week 12? And I really don't see it being that much different. Honestly, even if they have a really good season, I don't know how much lower this is going to get. Are we going to get to, if they're an excellent team this year, we can get the AFC at +300 or +350? Is the Super Bowl going to go down to 7 or 8 to 1? And you're dealing with Burrow with a calf strain. And as you know, through your football career, when you have a calf strain, all of a sudden, for whatever reason, your hamstring gets strained. Other parts of the bottom half are affected because you're overcompensating or undercompensating for the calf strain. So there is concern. There's no doubt about the concern here. Let's take a look at the line history here for the Bengals game. Thank you guys so much for joining our debut episode of Bankroll Blitz here on Pub Sports Radio. The Bengals are sitting at -2.5 at Pinnacle. This was down to 1.5 when the news of the calf strain came out. So, of course, July 27th, I believe it was, is that he got hurt. It didn't actually move until July 31st, where we went to -1.5, and then it's come back to -2.5. But there are a lot of twos on the board. Let's take a look at the total here for this one. We have it's sitting at 47 at, oh, sorry, that's Bovada. Let me move back to Pinnacle. Slightly juiced to the over. This got up to 48. Got up to 48 for a while, and it came back down to 47 yesterday. Dropped to 47 yesterday at 3 in the morning over at Pinnacle. Let's take a look at the cash flow for this Bengals-Browns game. You have 44% of the tickets and 70% of the cash on the Cleveland Browns, and I understand why. If you look at what the Bengals have done early in the season or against the Browns, and we'll go over those numbers, I get it. 44% of the tickets and 75% of cash is on the over. That's a little surprising here. Leonard Welch on the Browns +2.5. Coin said he'd love a +3 here. Christopher Tatum on the Browns money line. Ron Crawford on the under 47. Arthur Mee Jr. with Browns and the points. Let's break this down a little further. Bengals have been very good to their backers over the past 2 seasons, but Joe Burrow is 1-4 in his career against the Browns. About the calf strain, Zach Taylor has said that Chidobe Awuzie is a definitive yes, will be in the lineup, but he remained non-committal on Joe Burrow, but he practiced in full for a third straight day yesterday. They had the day off today. Offensive coordinator Brian Callahan said last week the team has a plan in place for Burrow to be ready to play week 1. That is the expectation. Burrow has been excellent and a model of consistency. 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in 2022. Only Mahomes had more touchdown passes, and 34-14 in 2021. He has a spectacular group of wide receivers at his disposal in Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. Every year, the question is, can this offensive line protect him? They have 10 offensive linemen on their 53-man roster. Orlando Brown Jr., Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Jonah Williams. Orlando Brown Jr. this year is playing left tackle. Jonah Williams is moving to the right tackle position. Burrow is 1-2 in season openers. They lost last year 23-20 in overtime to the Steelers. He threw 4 picks and lost a fumble. He was coming back after undergoing an emergency appendectomy. This calf strain with him not practicing, there are some definite similarities. Defensively, Lou Anarumo begins his 5th season as defensive coordinator. He's very good. He doesn't have base coverage. He sets up his defense based on the opponent. They lose 3 starters on defense, including both of their starting safeties in Bates and Von Bell. They add veteran safety Nick Scott from the Rams, first-round pick Miles Murphy from Clemson, defensive backs DJ Turner and Jordan Battle. They have stars in defensive end Trey Hendrickson and linebacker Logan Wilson, Chidobe Awuzie, who we talked about, DB, and Mike Hilton. And in Zach Taylor's tenure, he's 11-25-1 to the under in the regular season and playoffs. Look, I love the Bengals. I'm interested in the Bengals in the futures market, but I don't love them here. And if I don't love them in week 1, why would I bet them before that? Take it away for us here, Troy. Your thoughts on the Cincinnati Bengals?
I'm right there with you, man. This is a team that I've loved, and how can you not love them if they're basically printing money? I mean, this team was 13-6 ATS last year and 8-3 ATS on the road. You don't see that in the NFL. That's a rarity to see that. And you know, when you see teams have this much success, and there's been a whole narrative around Joe Burrow's ATS success, and to see this line where it is under a touchdown, under a field goal, I think that's a little bit telling. But you know, on offense, they added Orlando Brown, like Jimmy touched on. I mean, that's a huge addition. This offensive line has been ass, and now they're a little bit better. But still, even with signing of Orlando Brown, one of the best linemen in the league, their PFF power rating is 17th in the NFL, which just was surprising to me. We all know what this offense is with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. I mean, it's elite. I mean, Joe Burrow's one-of-a-kind quarterback. There's no doubt about it. On the defensive side of things, they lost some key players in the secondary, like Jimmy touched on as well, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, and Eli Apple. But the secondary is a little bit overrated to me at 15th in the NFL when they don't have one player ranking inside the top 40 defensive backs in the NFL. So that kind of blew my mind a little bit. You know, I just think that with the Bengals, it's not time to move on them early. I mean, we've seen them the past 2 years. It's like a snowball down fucking hill with the Bengals. They start slow, they get bigger and badder as the season goes on, and by the end of the season, they're in full form. And how could that not apply here more than anywhere else with the Bengals? Because with Joe Burrow's injury and just there's just so much going on with the team behind closed doors. I think the Bengals are going to be good. I mean, I think they are Super Bowl contenders when you look at the roster. I'm not high on this offensive line at all. I mean, we'll see if they could take a step forward, but outside of the offensive line, there's not a lot to pick on with this Bengals team.
I don't know. I want to be involved with them in the futures market, but I just don't see why I would bet before a game when I think they're in tough. You know, Ron Crawford here says another home division dog, better defense in Cleveland. Let's talk about them. Their win total at 9.5, juiced heavily to the under at -140. They're plus 375 to win the AFC North, plus 2,000 to win the AFC, and 33-1 to win the Super Bowl. We get our first full season from Deshaun Watson since his impressive 2020 campaign. He threw 4,823 yards, 70.2 completion percentage, 33 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He did not look good last year. He completed 58.2% of his passes for 1,102 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. They averaged 16.3 points per game in his starts. Now he's still in his prime. He turns 28 on the 14th in 9 days. They tried to give him more help in the offseason. They trade for Elijah Moore. They'll line up with Donovan Peoples-Jones. They sign Marquise Goodwin. They draft wide receiver Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee in the 3rd round. Tight end David Njoku caught 58 passes for 628 yards last year. Nick Chubb's coming off a monster campaign, 1,525 yards, 12 touchdowns. They bring in a new defensive coordinator, and Jim Schwartz. He was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles before being hired by Tennessee last year. And they have Myles Garrett, who we know is a monster. And I guess Schwartz was hired by the Titans to be senior defensive assistant most recently. Garrett has a chance to be the first player since Reggie White to record 16-plus sacks in 3 seasons. They have Zadarius Smith. He's going to be the number 2 edge rusher. you're going to get a lot of opportunities when you know you're beside Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett's going to get a ton of attention. Stefanski has struggled at times. He's 5-13 against the spread against AFC North opponents, but at home it's completely different. 3-0 against the spread, 3-0 straight up. They can't be trusted in really tight games. Cade York is a big part of that. 2-6 in one-score games, 1-4 in games decided by a field goal or less. Look, I can completely understand why people want to back these Cleveland Browns. I get it. In saying that, I don't want to do it. I can't get there. I can't get there. Now, the under 47 is very interesting to me. Take it away here. Talk about the Cleveland Browns and if you are making a move on this game, Troy.
So the Browns, am I on mute? No, I'm good. So yeah, the Browns, this is definitely going to be my horse this season. They remind me a lot of how I felt about the Eagles last year, where it's just all boxes are checked. Offensive line, defensive line, DB, and quarterback, a little bit of a question mark, but a lot of upside. And we'll get into that a little bit. Brissett last year with the Browns had a career year behind this offensive line, but he struggled in clutch situations. And if you go back and you watch those games against the Jets, the Falcons, and the Chargers, they were winning all those games. They should not have been lost. They were bonehead mistakes by my guy, Jacoby Brissett. They could have easily been 10-7 last year. To Deshaun Watson, come on. We got to expect this guy's going to struggle in his first season back, or, first half season back after being out for a season and a half. Football is a different animal. You need reps at the NFL level at that speed, game speed, to actually – you have to live those reps before you could, really consider yourself back. So I still think we're going to see a lot of progress from Deshaun this season. And he's 27 years old. He's in the prime of his career. And you touched on a lot of what I wanted to touch on with the roster. This roster from top to bottom looks incredible. They're highly rated by PFF. I have them rated even higher than PFF because this, to me, goes neck and neck with the Eagles for the best offensive and defensive line combination. And I couldn't be more high on a team, I feel like, this year than I am with the Browns. Just because, and when I say I'm high on a team, it's really comparing what they were last year to this year. I'm not talking about like complete upside to be Super Bowl champions. I'm talking about year over year, how much did they get better year over year? And I think they're going to take a giant step forward, and that 7-10 is going to turn into an 11-6 type of number.
And you have officially moved on them, tweeted out an official action for you. Browns +2 you got at -110. Browns money line at +104. And the Browns to win the division at +400. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that division bet?
Yeah, and I want to touch too on that. You might have missed it. I did a Browns teaser with the team coming up based on some analytics that I put together on home dogs, short home dogs, and teasing short home dogs. If you want to see that, check out my Twitter. I posted something about it maybe an hour ago at this point. But yeah, the Browns to win the division. You look at this division, it's a gauntlet. It's probably the best division in football. There's no doubt about it. But I just see value on a team in the Browns when I got them over +400 relative to the field. All the value in this division is on the Steelers and the Browns, and I'll get into that splitting hairs with the Browns and the Steelers a little bit later. But yeah, I really have faith that this Browns team, if you look at the strength of schedule, you compare it to the Ravens, you compare it to the Bengals, I think that they have the best chance to come out on top in the division. And they own, you said we touch on it. They own Joe Burrow, right? And it's funny because the Burrowhead narrative that happened in the AFC Championship game last year, and how, if you watch that documentary on Netflix, QB, you really saw the impact that had on Patrick Mahomes and that whole entire team. I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. And but there's no narrative behind this situation. The Browns own Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow currently hasn't won in Cleveland. And the Bengals, in their years past, they've struggled against predominantly heavy running teams, rushing attacks. And that's what the Browns could deliver with Nick Chubb. I just think all things align for the Browns this year, with the huge upside at QB with Deshaun Watson. He's an MVP caliber quarterback. He was. When you're out of the league, like I said, I want to touch on it again because I think it's important. When you're out of the league for a year and a half, and you're not playing at game speed, you're not going to be right when you come back. The toughest position in sports is quarterback in the NFL. There's only 13 guys that have a fucking spot solidified in the NFL at quarterback, right? I think that we're going to see a huge step forward from this Browns team, specifically because of Deshaun Watson, also because of Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, who I think is going to kind of wrangle in that defense and get them moving in the right direction.
We have locked in action from Troy Torrence to start out his campaign. We'll be tracking all of this action very closely. He'll be tweeting it out as well. He's a must follow on Twitter at Troy Torrence 11. Browns +2 -110. Browns money line +104. Browns division +400. Ron Crawford on the under 47. Quickly, we need to move on because we have so many games to get through. But what do you think about that under 47? Because I am interested in it.
I think the under 47, I was looking at this total earlier and I had thoughts and I was right there with you on the under, even though on FanDuel it has moved up, it has ticked up a little bit, but and this is something I should post in this range. This is something I should post on Twitter so people can get an idea of what it looks like from an NFL point of view. But in this range with the sharp money on the over, well, it depends on. Do you see sharp money on the over, Jim? What's the splits you got on this?
Yeah, I see that. And the market not moving, dropped a point, but 44% of the tickets, 75% of cash on the over.
And FanDuel and Pinnacle is the dominant book when it comes to NFL specifically. At least from what I've seen, because I've done a lot of research into these two books, FanDuel and Pinnacle, over the past few years. But yeah, when sharps are on the over and the total doesn't move or it stays within a half a point, because that's what I'm seeing so far, the total goes under at an 82% clip, or it did last year. So yeah, I would be all about the under. I agree that that's the play on the total.
I'm very interested in it. At this point, I'm not betting it tonight, and I will think about it more.